President Trump just finished his speech criticizing the trial, calling it an embarrassment to New York. And he pointed out that Michael Cohen, a former federal prosecutor, left his job to work on the case, suggesting that a political connection between the trial in New York and the federal government in Washington, D.C. took place. Now, this is really heartbreaking to watch, guys. The judge, Juan Merchan, he's under a lot of scrutiny for allegedly imposing a gag order on Donald Trump, restricting him from speaking about the trial. Critics are arguing that this was excessive, especially since Trump is he's a leading presidential candidate. And he ultimately ended up winning the presidential candidacy. And they're seeing this as lawfare, using the legal system to target political opponents. Melania Trump just got the news about Donald Trump's sentencing. And it really is heartbreaking to know that this level of injustice and lawfare is taking place. Comment yes if you think that Melania Trump makes an amazing first lady. In the comments down below. Appreciate you guys' support. Thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate you guys also hitting the like button for the video, you guys sharing these videos and subscribing to the channel. I can't thank you guys enough for that.
Out that court is over. The sentence has been imposed, an unconditional discharge. And as we bring in Mark Levin for his commentary on this, Mark, Judge Merchan imposed no jail time, no fine, no punishment that anyone can discern, with the exception that he is now branded Donald Trump with a scarlet letter of a big F on his forehead, that he is a convicted felon.
This is crazy, guys. This judge is a disgrace. I mean, just a total political hit job, guys. They gave the green light for Trump to use the lawfare on all of them. What do y'all think about that, right? So legal experts feel like this case was poorly handled. I mean, the key issue here is that the jury wasn't required to even agree unanimously on the charges. Like, first of all, who does that? Critics are saying that this allowed the prosecution to present a made-up crime. This is so even even commentators from liberal networks. I'm talking CNN. We're talking ABC. They're calling this MSNBC. Some of the political candidates on these liberal networks are calling this case unprecedented and absurd. In fact, the trial is currently being viewed as damaging the credibility of New York's legal system. Critics are accusing figures like Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and Attorney General Letitia James of politicizing the courts. And restoring trust could literally take years, if ever. The judge disgraced our country. New York, you're disgraceful at this point. And
we have just heard that apparently Trump has finished speaking and that Merchan, Judge Merchan, is starting the sentencing right now.
And in wrapping up, Trump said that this is a great embarrassment to the state of New York. And then Jonathan pointed out this idea that Michael Colangelo left his position as a deputy or assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice to take on the mantle of a humble state prosecutor for this case. I mean, that was something that a lot of people said, well, that draws a direct connection between what's going on in New York City and what's going on at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What do you think?
Well, it is interesting that in these final remarks, Trump is opening up about many of these issues. He's raised some of these themes before, but he was also under a gag order, something that many of us felt was excessive. You had this acting New York justice in Manhattan effectively control.
Keyword being acting New York justice. This wasn't his role to play. It never was.
The leading candidate for the presidency on a subject that was important to many voters. Many voters saw what Merchan did in his courtroom as raw lawfare and saw these types of cross-pollination that you just raised, John, as evidence of that. And I think that, in my view, that's the verdict that is going to be unassailable here. I don't think this case is likely to be upheld. I hope it will not be. But I think that that the verdict on the New York court system is going to really stand the test of time. This was where the New York court system failed in a spectacular fashion, allowed people like Bragg, Attorney General James, and others to weaponize their system. It's going to take years for New York to regain a sense of legitimacy in the eyes of many citizens, including many business people who look at this and say, but for the grace of God go I. But the one thing that I think that Trump can take some solace in is that he can now appeal this case in whole.
Okay, so despite these criticisms, Trump's team hopes to be able to appeal this, right? Now, they're arguing that the trial included reversible errors, such as the unfair jury instructions. Let's not forget about the inconsistent rulings on the evidence, right? However, success in New York's justice system, it's perceived as being biased. And it really does. It seems unlikely that the appeal would even go through, because you're basically going to the same people who convicted him and asking them to review this case and make sure everything's on the up and up. I don't have a whole lot of faith. I think that this has to get escalated to the Supreme Court and see what they say. Now, the trial consumes significant taxpayer money. It consumes significant court resources, and a lot of people are saying, this could have been used for serious crimes like assaults and robberies that are taking place all over New York City right now. And they're arguing that, pursuing Trump's case, it came at the expense of public safety. We all know about what's going on in New York right now, right? Critics are arguing and suggesting collusion between New York prosecutors and the Biden administration. And so they're questioning whether the federal government and the state cases were coordinated to target Trump unfairly. And this raises a lot of concerns about the justice system's impartiality. I mean, the judge, his daughter, and the DA need to be investigated and disbarred for political interference.
And as Andy was talking about, there are some glaring, in my views, reversible errors. I agree with Andy that the one that takes my breath away, even beyond the fact that I think this is a made-up criminal case with a made-up crime, is that the judge did not require the jury to unanimously agree on what happened. That is, in order to zap that dead misdemeanor into life, they needed this secondary crime. What was Trump trying to hide? What was he trying to achieve? Mershon just said, come up with anything. It doesn't matter. You just choose on this menu, and you don't even have to tell us what you actually think happened in this case.
How is this legal? This is so unconstitutional. I have almost no words for this. This is just so unconstitutional. Just imagine take Trump out of it. Like, some people don't like Trump. I get it, right? But it's not about Trump. Take Trump out of it for a second. Imagine you're just, walking down the street, going for a walk, and a police officer decides to arrest you and cuffs you, throws you in the back of a police car, takes you to jail. They don't tell you what you're being charged with. And then you end up facing a court, a jury, a judge. The DA says, hey, we're prosecuting Joe Schmo that we got off the street. And we're not going to even tell him what he's being charged with. We're not going to tell him what the crime is. And ultimately, the average person doesn't even have the financial resources like Donald Trump has to be able to fight this thing with, teams of attorneys. This is imagine this could have happened to anyone. So what would be the recourse for the average Joe who's not Donald Trump, who doesn't have news coverage constantly and legal analysts who have enough interest to look through this case and pull it apart and show the injustice that's being taken place here? This is a horrible, dangerous precedent that's being set in New York City.
That should be outrageous to everyone, including critics. And, I have to give credit that, over at CNN, their senior analyst said this was unprecedented, absurd. The New York senator from New Jersey recently used stronger language to condemn this case. Those are voices from the left that I want to give credit to. But where the silence, the deafening silence, is coming from the New York legal system itself. And that's where I think many of us are rather shocked that we ever got to this point to see this sentence come down in a case that should never have been brought.
I think it's really wild how if it were not for Trump, we would never even be really having this conversation. But Judge Juan Merchan defended his actions, saying Trump's trial was treated like any other case. And the other thing that's crazy is how this is one of the cases against Trump where they didn't even allow cameras into the courtroom. You ever notice that? Remember when he was battling against Judge Arthur Engeron and Letitia James? There were cameras in the courtroom. You could see the whole situation if you wanted to. Let's look at the Fannie Willis case. The cameras are in the courtroom. What was Judge Juan Merchan trying to keep behind closed doors where he wouldn't allow cameras into the courtroom to monitor the trial as it went on? You know what I'm saying, guys? And critics when you have liberal critics defending Trump, that's how you know how bad this is. So critics are arguing that this is not true. They're arguing that Judge Juan Merchan defending his actions, saying that Trump's trial was treated like any other, is not true. And there's many serious criminals in New York City right now, and they're not even prosecuted. Meanwhile, Trump faced a full trial over what almost anybody and their mama would have said it is easily under the category of like minor charges. And so these are widespread concerns about fairness, political bias, the misuse of legal resources in Trump's trial. This is really going to ruin New York City's justice system, in my humblest of opinions.
Andy, Todd Blanche is the defense attorney with Trump today. He's going to be starting at the Justice Department on January 20th.
Right.
That is not a Senate confirmed position, right?
No, it is.
Oh, it is. So he'll have to be Senate confirmed. So he's probably not going to talk too much outside of this until then. But can you project a little bit ahead? I mean, if they're saying what they're saying about the New York system and also about the overall court proceedings in America and people not having confidence, what can or should or do you anticipate Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi might do there?
Well, I think the first flashpoint, Dana, and Trey and I talked about this before we came in, is probably the Mangione case, the terrible homicide case that we had in New York.
That's right.
Very interesting, not to get too much into the weeds about this, but in most of the country, there's no problem if the state prosecutes someone having a separate federal prosecution because of what we call dual sovereignty. But in New York, it doesn't work that way. In New York, they have what they call equitable double jeopardy in the state constitution. And as a practical matter, what that always meant when I was a federal prosecutor here, we could always win the turf battles, because if we go first, the state can't go at all. They're basically jeopardied out, as we used to say. So I thought it was interesting that the Biden Justice Department evidently made a deal with Bragg that New York could go first on Mangione,
Wow.
and then the feds would go. I would be very surprised if the Trump Justice Department feels like they have to honor that deal.
All right. Anything on that, Trey?
I hate to use the word collusion, but Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, if they're all confirmed, will find out whether or not there was collusion between Merrick Garland and Alvin Bragg to bring this case in state court. They'll have all the paperwork, all the paper trail. So if there was collusion, we'll know about it in about 3 months.
Oh, I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for that. Let me know in the comments, guys. Hit the 1 if you cannot wait to find out if there was collusion in Donald Trump's case, guys. I think it's pretty obvious what's happening, but to get it like officially documented and confirmed by Trump's select team, this is what we need to see. And I really think that this legitimately this gives Trump the green light to be able to use lawfare himself against everyone who came after him. I hate to say tit for tat, but something's got to be done about this. What do y'all think?
So more notes from inside the court from our Kerry Urban. Judge Merchan, in his preamble to announcing the sentence, says the Trump trial was no different than all of the other criminal trials in the building. Merchan attempting to create equivalency between Trump and ordinary criminals while acknowledging the fact that he won the presidency and how it is, in fact, different. Andy, you want to tackle that one? That the Trump...
That's the biggest line of bull I've ever heard.
Case is no different than any other case that comes into his courtroom?
Well, I think the Trump case is different because the defendant is in the courtroom. In Alvin Bragg's New York, that doesn't often happen. We have criminals who commit very serious crimes here who never actually get charged and never find their way into the courtroom. When they get into one of Alvin Bragg's courtrooms, if they start out with a felony, if it gets down to a misdemeanor, that's actually lucky for the public. Very often, there's not even misdemeanor dispositions. I just think it's like living in an alternative universe, listening to these guys. If you actually spend time in New York, if you grew up in New York like I did, and you saw the plummeting of crime from the 90s for the 25 years after that, which was accomplished by actual prosecution of cases, and then you have a district attorney who comes in with what he called a day one memo, which basically said there's a new regime in town and what we're going to try as prosecutors is non-prosecution. And that's pretty much what criminals get in New York, unless their name is Donald Trump.
Wow. I mean, and this is the exact kind of woke policy, liberal policy that is running rampant in states like California. Look at San Francisco, and it's ruining New York. It's ruining New York. There's no crime. There's no punishment for crimes committed. Look at what has happened in New York City subway systems recently. Okay, people getting pushed onto the train tracks. People being lit on fire. Remember the woman that was on the train who was sleeping? I mean, no one is getting their just punishment for the crimes that are committed. And you waste New York City taxpayer money to manufacture a crime, escalate this non-crime against Trump, and then on top of that, sentence him. Also that you can label him a felon. This is obvious. This is so obvious in terms of what's actually happening with. If anyone has any eyes or ears paying attention to what's going on, this is blatantly obvious that this is not about justice. This is so far from justice. This is one of the greatest examples of an injustice that I've ever witnessed. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you guys next time.